All right. Okay. Everybody's having troubles. All right. So, we're getting lots of questions about peptides. I could probably just do peptide questions every day. This one's I've seen a lot. There's a lot of confusion about this one. Um, the difference between micro dosing and what we call split dosing. Just because you take something every day instead of once a week does not mean you're microdosing. What microdosing is taking a very, 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 very small amount of something um, that is typically less than what you get any type of response from for whatever reason you're doing that for. There's reasons to microdose different things. You can microdose psilocybin and things like that because it does give you an effect, but it's more of a calming effect. So we see this. I use this a lot for GLP-1 stuff. So semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide. What split dosing actually does is this is how all hormone therapy should be done. When you first do an injection, let's use testosterone as an example. This is easier. Has a 7-day half-life. So you take 10 units on Monday. By next Monday, you're at 5. Lots of people who are on testosterone will tell you when they're doing 1 shot a week, they feel great on shot day. And for 2 days after shot day, they feel fantastic. But by the time it rolls around, like the day before shot day, they can kind of feel themselves kind of sluggish and kind of run down. And then there's feels like you turn the volume down. Well, it's because you have half of what you need in your bloodstream. Now, if you did shots every single day, the spike and then crash of the medication, peptide, whatever it is, would be significantly less. And so you take less, but you take it every day. And so instead of having these big spikes, your blood stability is about like this. So you feel the same way every day. Everything's working the way it's supposed to. You don't get these giant weird swings, throughout the week. So a lot of people have been starting to look at split dosing for things like GLP-1s. We've been doing. That's the only way that I've recommended we do it for a long time, because what we're seeing is that not everyone's body works the same way, and some people are getting not only phenomenal results at 3, 4, 5 milligrams, where other people are saying that you have to take 6 milligrams once a week. But they're also not having the side effects. A lot of times what you'll do is you can walk people up to where they start feeling it and be like, okay, this is where you need to stay, because if you're already having a full loss of appetite, if you're already having nausea at this level, you don't really want to go any higher. We saw lots and lots of damage from semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy, all those, because people were just being like, everyone's body works the same way. Let's give everybody the same amount. And so that was one of the problems that we're getting into. So split dosing really kind of helps with that type of thing. It also helps with, maintaining normal circadian rhythms. So if you're doing like growth hormone, CJC or tesamorelin or something like that at night to increase growth hormone, pulsations, you do want to do it every night. If you're doing epitalon to increase pineal release of melatonin, regenerate your own production of melatonin. Again, this is one of those things that you kind of want to do on a somewhat more regular basis. So split dosing is probably the best way to get those, get this, the difference between your highs and your lows squished down a little bit, makes it more even, makes things function a little bit better in the body. So split dosing is pretty important. I would look at doing that. Make sure that you have somebody who's done the math, because you have to look at the half-life, which is of any compounds. So like, for instance, I guess the half-life of testosterone is 7 days. So what a half-life is how long does it take before your body has read 50% of that specific compound. And so if you have a 3-day half-life versus a 10-day half-life versus whatever, you've got to do that math to make sure that the stacking component is figured out properly. But that's usually how we do split dosing, and it is by far my favorite way of making sure that everyone's getting the highest functionality, and it's the safest, because typically you're going to have a little bit higher levels throughout the week, and it's going to be more even. So split dosing is a really good one. I'd highly recommend you guys do that. Look at that. The other thing is that when you're starting to use peptides and when you're starting to create change within the body, you have to recognize that the machine you're asking to do stuff, you're basically giving orders to bake cakes, right? So you're going and you're like, hey, build muscle tissue, build bone, create more glutathione, create more growth hormone, create, whatever. Use the glucagon to burn fat. Well, when you give that command, your body's an electrochemical machine. It requires different nutrients, different chemicals and things to make those processes happen. So you're going to have to make sure that your diet's on point. This is, again, one of those big deals that you really got to recognize when we're looking at things like GLP-1s or retatrutide or things like that. Because if you don't give your body the things it requires to make clean bile, your body can't make bile. It can't process fat very well. This is where we get cholecystitis. This is where we get gallbladder issues. This is where we get liver issues. So you've got to make sure that you're feeding the body. It's the entire thing. You can't just be like, I'm just going to take a peptide and fix all the problems. No, you're going to create more. So make sure that you guys are getting those nutrients in, and you're working with somebody who understands what you need to bring in. We shouldn't be seeing a lot of muscle loss with any of the GLP-1s if they're used right. The problem is that they're not being used right. They're not being explained properly. This is why I tell people stop focusing on calories, start focusing on the metabolic chemistry that is the food you're consuming. What's in the food and what does it do to the body? What hormones does it release? What processes does it create? What are we using those oils for? Those chemicals for? This is kind of one of those things where we start looking at the sunburn stuff and the skin cancer stuff with seed oils. High omega-6 oils versus high omega-3 oils. Chemistry matters. So, those are some of the things we got to kind of factor in. And then the other thing is that I see people talking about it all the time. They're like, oh, well, if you don't want muscle wasting, just throw another peptide. Throw CJC on there. So, guys, CJC without DAC lasts about 30 to 45, maybe an hour. It's not going to maintain muscle mass. You need to get your testosterone levels up. Testosterone is the base function for all anabolic growth in the body. Yeah, growth hormone's phenomenal. I love it. It's fantastic. Without that functional base of steady testosterone, it's not nearly as beneficial. Even if you were to take like a CJC with DAC and make that 30-minute half-life, 6 days, you're still going to require testosterone as the chief function to maintain and grow muscle tissue. People ask me all the time, like, well, I don't want to lose muscle tissue. I want to gain muscle tissue while I'm taking a GLP-1 or Reta or whatever. Fantastic. Where's your testosterone? Remember, each one of these hormones tells the body to do something. Testosterone tells it to regenerate, heal, and repair. So it's muscle tissue, ligament, tendon, bone, all those things. Blood vessels, all that stuff. So if your testosterone's not where it needs to be, you need to get that up first. That's your base. That's your primary function. Get your testosterone where it's supposed to be, men and women. Then start adding on the growth hormones and stuff like that. You can do Reta without testosterone. I would not recommend it because, again, you want to start maintaining your metabolism lives in your muscle tissues. So if you have less muscle tissue, you're going to have less metabolic function. And if we're taking peptides to increase metabolic function, give your body the factories to do it so that we'll have more muscle tissue, we'll have more mitochondrial density, things like that. And then there's a lot of stuff out, people bring me research and they're like, hey, I'm supposed to be taking 10 times of this because of these issues. See, it helped to regenerate, these people who have these horrible issues. If you don't have a horrible issue, you probably don't need as much. So again, dosing off of what we find on the internet for people who have a serious issue, when you don't have said serious issue, your needs are going to be less. So, keep that in mind when you're dosing stuff because, it's probably not going to hurt you, but overdosing is just kind of wasting peptides and money and resources and things like that. So it's a little bit more complicated. I hate to tell you that the chemistry is biophysiology is a little bit more complicated than just, take whatever you want and it'll fix all your stuff. But some of these things are pretty amazing. We've been able to see just ridiculous things. But again, think about what peptides are doing. They're resetting your metabolic function. So anyone who talks about diet, anyone who talks about exercise, anyone who talks about sleep being important for general health and wellness, this is what peptides work on, right? So we've got to start recognizing that what we're trying to do is tweak the metabolic function a little bit. A lot of people, especially in the weight loss area, are not producing the proper amount of glucagon. This is why Retas have been so amazing because a lot of people their bodies have been either damaged or they're genetically just don't produce a lot of glucagon. And glucagon is the hormone that tells your body to burn fat. So if you don't produce enough, you're going to be heavier. No matter, and this is all the people who are like, I don't eat very much and I do exercise and I don't understand why I'm so fat. Your body probably doesn't produce a lot of glucagon. It's the same idea when, 100 years ago or 150 years ago, before we really understood, type 1 diabetics, they're like, they had all these issues and nobody could figure it out. They don't produce enough or any insulin. So insulin and glucagon are kind of the two major hormones that balance metabolic function. So, these are the things that we have to understand. Like now we put the insulin glucagon levels back together where they're supposed to be. Now what happens? Well, now the system, now your body goes in this whole totally different system of utilizing fat for fuel source. If your body hasn't been making enough glucagon for a long time, it's not going to be ready to do this. This is again where we see liver issues, cholecystitis issues, we see gallbladder issues, things like that. So recognize the physiology of what you're doing, and it'll really, really help kind of get things back together. I'll start making some shorter videos of this that you guys can, see them a little bit easier. So, but anyway, if you guys have any questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or give us a DM or that sort of thing. I would recommend that you guys look into split dosing for any of your GLP-1, GLP-3 options. All right, you have a fantastic day. Thanks for your time.